I overheard my fiancée secretly planning to marry me, then divorce me for half my assets, and run back to her ex. So I exposed her in front of everyone, and her plans crumbled. Hello Reddit eyes plus here. The day I overheard her, everything changed. I wasn't even supposed to be home that early. Work had let out early for once, and as I parked in the driveway, I saw her car in its usual spot. I smiled to myself. Claire was probably inside, going over the seating chart or finalizing the wedding playlist. She loved to plan, and our wedding, set for just 2 weeks away, had been her masterpiece. As I walked inside, I heard her voice drifting from the living room. But instead of the happy, excited tone I expected, there was a sharp edge to it. I paused by the door, about to call out to her, when I realized she wasn't alone. She was on the phone. "You don't get it, do you?" she hissed. "Once I marry him, I'm set for life. Half of everything he owns will be mine in the divorce." My heart froze. Divorce? I stayed rooted in place, unable to process what I was hearing. Her voice softened into that sickly, sweet tone she always used to manipulate people. "Babe, it's only temporary. I'll come back to you, I promise. This is just about getting what we deserve. He's so blinded by love, he won't even see it coming." Her laughter sent a chill down my spine. The kind of laughter that makes you realize you've been played like a fool. For a few minutes, I stood there in silence, a storm of betrayal and anger brewing inside me. But as the initial shock wore off, a new resolve took its place. If she thought I'd be her stepping stone, she had no idea who she was dealing with. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation, not for the wedding, but for what I was about to do. I kept my distance, feigning busyness with last-minute work tasks, letting her believe everything was fine. Meanwhile, I met with my lawyer, canceled joint financial arrangements, and updated my will. I also reached out to a few key people, my best man, her maid of honor, and her parents. They didn't know the full story, but they trusted me enough to agree to my requests for a slight change in the wedding schedule. The day arrived, and the venue looked stunning. Claire had truly outdone herself with the arrangements. Friends and family filled the room, their faces glowing with joy and anticipation. As the ceremony began, I stood at the altar, watching her walk down the aisle in a dress she'd gushed about for weeks. Her smile was radiant, but now I saw it for what it really was, a mask. The officiant began, and we exchanged vows, or at least, she did. I let her go first, her words dripping with fake devotion. When it was my turn, I cleared my throat and reached into my pocket. "Claire," I began, holding up my phone. "Before I make my vows, I think everyone here deserves to hear something." The crowd murmured in confusion. Claire's smile faltered as I pressed play on a recording, the one I'd taken the day I overheard her scheming. Her voice filled the room. Every word, every laugh, every promise to her ex played out like a script for betrayal. Gasps erupted from the audience, and Claire's face turned as white as her dress. "You were right, Claire," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. I didn't see it coming, but now I do. The room was dead silent, save for her stammering attempts to explain. This isn't—" "It's exactly what it sounds like," I interrupted. Turning to the guests, I continued, "Thank you all for being here today. There won't be a wedding, but feel free to enjoy the open bar on me." Claire's world crumbled in an instant. Her parents, mortified, left the venue without speaking to her. Her friends looked at her with disgust, and her ex, who I'd made sure was uninvited, was nowhere to be found. As for me, I walked out with my dignity intact and the knowledge that I'd dodged a bullet. In the weeks that followed, Claire tried to reach out, offering weak apologies and desperate explanations, but I'd made my decision. I wasn't just moving on, I was thriving. The fallout was swift and merciless for Claire. Within days of the wedding that wasn't, word of her scheme spread like wildfire through our social circles. Friends who once adored her cut ties. Her job, at a boutique PR firm, was suddenly restructuring, and she found herself out of work. She had gambled everything on her plan and lost. For me, life was different, but in the best way possible. At first, there was an outpouring of sympathy. Friends, family, even distant acquaintances reached out to check on me. But I didn't feel like a victim. I felt liberated. One of the first things I did was take a week off work. I needed time to breathe, to process, and to figure out what came next. During that time, I discovered something surprising: freedom. A week after the fiasco, I got a call from someone unexpected. Claire's ex, Mike. He started by apologizing, saying he'd had no idea she was planning such an elaborate betrayal. "She told me you were rich," he said, his voice tinged with guilt. "I should have seen through her lies. She's been doing this kind of thing for years, using people, manipulating them. I was just another pawn until I couldn't give her what she wanted anymore." Mike explained that she had initially left him because he'd hit financial trouble. When she met me and realized my potential, she saw her golden ticket. It was satisfying to hear confirmation of what I already knew, but what struck me most was how broken Mike sounded. He had been through his own version of my ordeal, and while I couldn't forgive him for his part in Claire's scheme, I could understand his pain. I poured my energy into rebuilding my life, not just professionally but personally. I reconnected with old friends, took up hobbies I'd neglected, and even started therapy to unpack the emotional toll of what had happened. The biggest challenge was trust. Every time I met someone new, I questioned their intentions, but over time, I learned to listen to my instincts again. About 6 months after the breakup, I met someone new, Anna. She was nothing like Claire, kind, genuine, and refreshingly honest. We met through mutual friends, and from the start, there was an openness about her that I found disarming. At first, I was hesitant. I didn't want to rush into anything. But Anna was patient. She didn't push for commitment or pry into my past. She simply showed up, time and time again, proving that not everyone was out to take advantage. Claire, on the other hand, didn't fare so well. Rumor had it that she tried to reconnect with Mike, but he wanted nothing to do with her. She moved out of the apartment we once shared, unable to afford the rent on her own, and bounced between friends' couches before finally relocating to another city. She reached out one last time, about a year later. Her message was long and rambling, filled with apologies and half-hearted excuses. She claimed she'd changed, that she'd learned from her mistakes, and that she wanted to make amends. The real victory wasn't exposing Claire or watching her life fall apart. It was finding my own happiness. The experience taught me to value myself, to set boundaries, and to trust my gut. Now, as I sit across from Anna at a little cafe downtown, I realize how far I've come. She's laughing at something I said, her eyes crinkling at the corners in that way I adore. For the first time in a long time, I feel at peace, because the best revenge isn't getting even, it's moving on, and I've done just that.